Hey, what's up guys, Marc here, and this is going to be the final and third episode in this mini-series covering the progress on my ArtWar 4 entry. So this time around, I'm starting from where I left off since the last episode. So I'm going to show you how I went from this simple-ish line art to the near complete illustration. Alright, before I even begin, make sure that you check out the ArtWar 4 page, link down in the description below, for all the entries. The contest is almost over, so a lot of the final entries are coming in, and the next couple of days are going to be super interesting, picking out the finalists and being able to look at all the final entries. Now, when it comes to my own entry, well, last time I left off at this state here. So for this illustration, the first thing that I wanted to do is to create a background, because the full illustration was going to include a background anyways, and the background is a major element in the composition of the piece here, so I wanted to get that done as soon as possible to get an idea of the, the overall composition, if I'm still on the right track. So that's the first thing that I did, and it looks something like this. So very rough, as you can see, but with all the final characters in here and all the effects, I was thinking that most of the background is going to be hidden anyway, so this should be more than enough. And so of course this was just the base with a little bit of clouds in here, add some motion to the painting, some red smoke for all the lava in between the rock, some more here in the foreground, an even closer foreground with more lava bubbling out of the ground. And of course, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense now that the character is not in here, but it will when we bring the character in. So that was the first step here. After the background, I wanted to get some flat colors onto these characters to get an idea of the overall color palette that I was going to be playing around with. So we start with flat colors, then from here we move on to the ambient occlusion, which is just kind of like self shadow, stuff like this. One here, main character, third character, and for the bad guys as well. And this pass here doesn't really look all that great, I'm sure you will agree. Of course, we're not going to stop here. This is just to give me kind of a shading base so that I can then apply gradient maps on top of this. And that would look something like this. So I need the different colors. The character is going to remain the same, the same overall color palette, but you can see here the shading is getting significantly better thanks to the gradient map. And if we add a little bit of glow, now our character is starting to look a little bit better. But of course, still a lot of work to do. So once I'm done applying the gradient maps here, what I'm going to do usually is pop like a new layer on top of everything and paint over the characters a little bit more. So trying to refine the shading on here. So there is some shading, of course, but it's not great. So adding that layer of paint. And something else you might have noticed as well is that my canvas is a lot wider now. So compared to the original, right, there's a lot more space. So basically I decided to spread out the elements here in my scene, because with the background in here, it started to feel a little bit cramped. So not a big change to composition, but I think this works a lot better. So at this point I have kind of basic shading, but I'm still missing a couple of elements here to add to my composition, and those would be the monsters in the background. Here we are, another one, another one, another one. Those are not done yet, as you can see, but I think with them in here, it feels like those characters are surrounded, and I guess it just feels more like a battle. So I might even end up adding a few more in the background here in the far distance. I'm not sure yet. But anyways, now with my composition pretty much, done, I was ready to move on to details. So usually what I do when it comes to the details is I'll shade my characters as if they were in a non-lit environment, almost like a, out in a day where it's overcast. So there's no directional light or anything like that, kind of just an ambient light all around, which is the blue light here that you can see on the top of the characters here, right? So on the shoulders, the little hat, and on all the parts of the armor that are kind of facing the sky. Now, when you have a lot of characters like this, and before I was ready to move on to the polishing stages, including the lights and all the final details, I like to separate my planes, so my foreground, my middle ground, my background, and all the different characters between themselves as well. Because right now, when there's nothing in between them, when they all share the same contrast values, things feel a little bit too mushed together. And so a good trick to add some distance in between the characters is just to add some sort of fog. So something like this. So this layer here was behind the three main characters to separate them from the background. Then I added some more fog right behind the main character so that the other two characters feel a little bit more pushed back. So let's add the effects. Whee! So ice, fireball, so of course needs a little bit of work still, but with more smoke for the foreground here, some vapor around the ice, and now this painting is starting to feel a little bit more complete. Which brings us to my favorite step of them all, adding the light. So you'll see, going from here to the final-ish illustration, there's still a lot to go, and really most of that will have to do with lights. So if I just turn the lights on here, all the yellow little boxes. First light, so this was meant to be the light from this fireball here, so lighting the characters, the two characters in the back. Then adding some rim light, the light from the sky, to separate those characters from the background because they do share similar values, right? So similar blues and similar kind of intensity. Then a little bit more light around the fire. And then for the main character, extra light, so it makes a big difference. Some more, diffuse light coming from the ground. And finally the rim light from the sky as well. And this painting is starting to look a lot more final now. So there's still a lot to do. At first glance, it might look pretty much done, but of course, this guy in the foreground here still needs some work. Oh, there you go. Forgot one light for him, so I just started. But yeah, so basically I need to finish this guy. Need to finish these two in the background here. And now when it comes to kind of like the self-critique part of this painting here, because there's a lot that I'm noticing that just does not work, that needs to be addressed, that needs to be polished. So right now I think the main character needs definitely more detail so that she stands out a bit more compared to the other ones. Because right now it's not so clear which one you should look at first, right? It's almost like a tie between those two. The fact that she's a little bit lower on the ground versus him appearing more dominant makes him feel slightly more important, but I'm pretty sure that if I just detail this character more and just render her out a little bit better with maybe more lights around the face, more details, I think she'll stand out enough that she will be clearly the focal point and the other characters in the back secondary focal points. Now with the rim light here on the main characters, it feels like there would need to be some extra lights here in the background. So if it's bright enough to create a rim light on the main characters, it should definitely be bright enough, to have something similar here for the background in the mountains. So I'll need to add that, and I will definitely need to play around with my saturation levels in here because a lot of this is just, really in your face, super saturated, very high contrast. So there's a lot of final adjustments to make, like this area here, it doesn't work that well, doesn't read that well. This hand here, it's kind of hard to see what's going on. Yeah, it just needs a little bit of clarity in this area. Then in the foreground, I kind of like what the lava looks like. This was almost like a happy accident. It kind of just worked pretty well, even though I wasn't too sure what I was going to do with this. Kind of a couple brush strokes and it ended up looking all right. So I'm going to leave it like that for the most part. I just need to add some extra details here in the foreground. I already have like little blades of grass. I'll just need to add some more, add some shading in here and some extra details to really sell that this is in the foreground. And really close up. Then finally, there's going to be a lot of final like adjustments when it comes to the brightness, the levels, the intensity of the contrast in different areas, the saturation. So a lot of post-processing that I am anticipating with this, but it's the fun part because now, everything is pretty much there. I just need to polish it more as much as I can before the end of the deadline. So there you go, guys. This is the last update that you'll see until I'm done with this and until I release the full time-lapse video in a couple of days. So make sure that you keep an eye out for that. This painting has been I don't want to say the biggest painting that I've ever done, but it might just be. So anyways, it should make for a pretty cool time-lapse video. So I do hope that you check that out when it comes out. Down in the description, along with a link to ArtWar 4, I'll also link my forum topic where I post all the updates for this in real time as I am kind of, progressing through the painting. So you can check that out if you want. But yeah, that's going to be it for today. As usual, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask them down below. And I'll see you guys next time.